Hello everyone. Today I'm here to give you a line-by-line explanation of the chapter, the last lesson, Flamingo Class 12. And side by side, we're also going to do the important questions that may come in the board examinations. So before we start reading the chapter, let me give you a brief introduction of what the chapter is all about. The last lesson is written by Alphonse Daudet, a French novelist. Now, this chapter has been set in the story has been set in the days of the Franco-Prussian War. That means when the war was going between France and Prussia. And in that war, Prussia defeated France. Now, as a result, an order came from Prussia that French will no longer be taught in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine. That means the Alsace and Lorraine have passed into the Prussian hands. As a result of this, all the teachers teaching French were asked to leave the place, which was obviously a great setback for all of them. So the story, the last lesson, revolves around M. Hamel, a French teacher, and a student, Franz. And the story tells us how the order which came from Berlin to stop teaching French in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine had an effect on the lives of the people and the students who were studying in the school. Now I would like to start reading the chapter. I started for school very late that morning and was in a great dread of scolding, especially because M. Hamel had said that he would question us on participles. Now this is Franz. He says that he started for school very late. He was already very late for school and he was in a great dread of scolding. Dread means he was afraid. He was frightened that he would get a scolding from M. Hamel, his French teacher. All the students are afraid when they do not prepare their lessons when they're asked to. You seldom face these things. Teachers ask their students to prepare for the lessons or some test. And when you do not prepare the chapters, you're obviously scared that you might get scolded in the class. In the same manner, Franz was very much afraid. He was afraid because M. Hamel had given them the homework that they should prepare the rules of participles, a topic, but he did not prepare it, so he was very much afraid that he will get a scolding from M. Hamel. And I did not know the first word about them. He said that our teacher, he asked us to prepare on participles, but I did not know a first word about them. I was unable to prepare it, and I did not know what I'm going to do now. For a moment, I thought of running away and spending the day out of doors. He says, for a moment, a thought came into my mind that I should maybe bunk my class. I should not attend my class and stay out of the doors. It was so warm, so bright. The birds were chirping at the edge of the woods, and in the open field back of the sawmill, the Prussian soldiers were drilling. He says the weather was so good. It was warm, it was bright. The birds were chirping at the branches of the tree. And the Prussian drilling soldiers were drilling. They were doing march pasts at the open field back of the sawmill. Sawmill is a factory where wood is cut and molded into different shapes. It was all much more tempting than the rule of participles. But I had the strength to resist and hurried off to school. He says everything outside seemed so attractive to me. I wanted to spend my day here instead of going to school. But then suddenly I cut my thought. I thought that no, I should not do this. I should not stay here, but I should go and attend the school. So he started moving more fast and he hurried off to the school. When I passed the town hall, there was a crowd in the front of the bulletin board. For the last 2 years, all our bad news had come from there. The lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. And I thought to myself, without stopping, what can be the matter now? Now, as he was, in a way, he was hurriedly going to the school, he passed to the town hall. And there, a huge crowd of people, they were standing in front of the bulletin board. Bulletin board is a place where all the information used to get displayed. In your school also, you have bulletin board where all the useful information is displayed, or any kind of notice from the principal is displayed on the bulletin board. In the same manner, the bulletin board in front of the town hall was used to display all sorts of important information, whether it is of the lost battles, any draft, or any order from the commanding officer. So Franz thought to himself, what can be the news now? We've got all our bad news from this place, from the bulletin board, whether it is of the lost battles, the draft, the orders of the commanding officer. And now he was thinking, what else can go wrong now? What is the matter? Then as I hurried by as fast as I could, the blacksmith watcher, who was there with his apprentice, reading the bulletin, called after me. Don't go so fast, Bub. You'll get to your school in plenty of time. So he's saying, as he was hurriedly moving without stopping, he was going towards his school. The blacksmith watcher who was there, a blacksmith who was standing there with his apprentice, with his attendant. Apprentice is an attendant who is learning how to practice a certain skill. It can be in any field. And the blacksmith, the watcher, as his name was, he was standing there with his attendant and he was reading the bulletin board. And then he called after me. That means he called his name and he said, don't go so fast, Bub. Bub means a kid. Don't go so fast, kid. You'll get to your school. He said, don't go so fast. You'll get to your school in time. You have plenty of time now. Franz probably thought that they're making fun of me. They're saying this sarcastically to me. They're pointing out to me, poking at me. Why? Because I'm already very much late for the school. And thinking that, he ran fast as he could to reach the school. And he reached M. Hamel's little garden all out of breath. That means he was breathing fastly because he was already late for the school. Now, usually when the school began, there was a great bustle all around. So usually, that means in the usual days when the school began, there was a great hustle and bustle. There was a great noise, great commotion all around, which could be heard out in the street. The opening and the closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison, very loud with their hands over our ears. He says usually, in the usual school days, there used to be a great commotion everywhere. And the noises, it would be so loud that it could be heard out in the street. The opening and the closing of desks, lessons repeated in unison. Unisons means lessons repeated continuously, constantly, one after the other, and they used to be very loud. With our hands over ears to understand better. He says, to understand the lesson better, we had to put our hand over our ears to avoid so much of noise. And the teacher's great ruler rapping on the table. But now it was all so still. So Franz here says he's comparing the usual days to the day it was. He said, usually our school was never so quiet. There was all around, noise all around the class, all around the area. And the noises were of opening and closing of desks, lessons repeated constantly by the teachers, rapping of the two teachers' ruler on the table. But now today it was very but still everything was silent. It was all quiet all around. I had counted on the commotion to get to my desk without being seen. He says, I had counted. That means I had relied. He said, I had already made a plan. I had a strategy that there would be so much noise in the class that I would sneak into the class and M. Hamill will not be able to make out. And I will be spared from the scolding. I will not get scolded. He said, I already made a plan that I will quietly move inside the class in such a great commotion, and nobody will make out. Nobody will come to know that I have entered the class. And like this, M. Hamill will also not get to know, and I will not be scolded. But of course, that day everything had to be as quiet as Sunday morning. He says, but who knew that day was everything was very, very quiet, as it is on Sunday morning. Now, Sunday mornings are usually for the people to relax, stay quiet, and not for any kind of work or going to the school. No, you have no work to do. And therefore, Sunday morning is usually quiet because it is for relaxing. And he says that that day seemed to be so quiet as if it was a Sunday morning. Through the window, I saw my classmates already in their places, and M. Hamill walking up and down with his terrible iron ruler. He says, when I peeped inside the classroom, when I saw inside the classroom through the window, I saw that all my classmates were already settled in their places. They were already settled down. And M. Hamill, he was taking rounds of the classes. He was walking up and down, and he had his terrible iron ruler in his hand. Why is he addressing the iron ruler as terrible? Because M. Hamill used to give them punishment, and he might have even got hurt. He might have even got beaten by the iron ruler. That's why he's addressing the iron ruler as terrible. He says that the whole class was quiet, everybody was settled in their places, and M. Hamill, he was walking up and down. He was taking rounds of the classes with the terrible iron ruler under his arm. I had to open the door and go in before everybody. He says, now I was left with no choice. Now Franz was left with no choice. He had to go before everybody. He was relying, he was being dependent on the situation that in such a great noise he will escape and nobody will get to know. Nobody will get to notice him. But now what? Now everything was so quiet that Franz had no other way. He had to go in before everyone. You can imagine how blushed and how frightened I was. He says, now you people can imagine what would be my situation, what could have been my situation when I was there, when I was entering the class. Everybody was looking at me, and I was so late, and I thought that now I'm gone. M. Hamill will not spare me now. But nothing happened. Now he says, but to my amazement, I was so surprised that when I entered the class, nothing like that happened. That means M. Hamill, he did not scold him. So M. Hamill saw me and said very kindly, go to your place quickly, little Franz. We were beginning without you. So he says that M. Hamill, when he saw me entering the class, he did not scold me at all. And that was very much surprising for me. I was thinking that I will be getting scolded by M. Hamill, but then he did not scold me. In fact, when he saw me, he very kindly said to me, come on, Franz, go back, go to your place, get your seat and settle down. We were going to begin the lesson without you only. That means M. Hamill, he reacted very nicely. He spoke very kindly to him. I jumped over the bench and sat down at my desk. Not till then, when I had got a little over my fright, did I see that our teacher had on his beautiful green coat, his frilled shirt, and the little black silk cap. all embroidered. He said, as soon as I sat on my seat, what is the first thing that I noticed? I noticed that M. Hamill, our teacher, he was dressed very much nicely. He was wearing his green coat, frilled shirt, and a little black silk cap which was embroidered. And he says that I've never seen him wearing such good clothes on the usual days. That he never wore except on the inspection and prize days. He says that I've always seen him wearing such special clothes only on the inspection days and on the prize days. And today was nothing special. So he was wondering, he was thinking, why M. Hamill was dressed so nicely? Why he was wearing on his best clothes? Besides, the whole school seemed so strange and solemn. Solemn means serious. Everybody, the whole school, it was so strange, so serious, and everybody was so quiet and so still. Till here we come to know what all strange things have been encountered by France. We will also read further, there are going to be more strange things, but till here what we have studied is, because a question can be asked in the board examinations, that what are the strange things that were encountered by France. So when he came to school, first of all, when he was coming, he was crossing the town hall, he saw there was a huge crowd in front of the bulletin board. That means might be a notice would have come. Then when he reached the school, everything was quiet. There was no noise. It was unlike the usual days. Everybody was quietly sitting at their places. Nobody was making any kind of noise, any kind of disturbance. And as soon as he sat, and especially when he thought that he would be getting scolded by his teacher, when he entered the class, M. Hamill did not scold him. He greeted him very nicely and he asked him to take his place. And as soon as he took his place, he took his seat, the first thing he noticed was M. Hamill was dressed up very nicely. He was wearing his green coat with frilled shirt and a silk embroidered cap, which he usually wore only on the special days, like either on the days of inspection or the prize days. And that day, nothing special was there. So what is the possible reason that all these strange things were happening? We'll read further now. But the thing that surprised me most was to see on the back benches that were always empty. So he says, one more thing I noticed, which was very much strange to me and very much surprising. And that was the back benches of the class. He says the back benches of the class always used to be empty. There were no one who used to sit on the back benches. That means the class was not always full of people, full of students. The village people sitting quietly like ourselves. The old hawser with his three-cornered hat, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and several other besides. He says, usually the back benches of the class, they used to remain empty. But today, all the people, all the elderly people, recognized people from the village, the old hawser. Hawser is a kind of caste from the village. The mayor, the postmaster, and several other villagers were sitting besides. He says, I could not understand why these people who have never attended the class, who have never entered the class only, and all of a sudden, all these people were sitting, they were occupying the back benches of the class, which means the whole class was occupied. Today, that day, everybody was there in the class to study, to learn. And that was very surprising for him, that why? What is special about that day? Why was everybody there in the class? Everybody looked sad. The hawser had brought an old primer, thumbed at the edges, and he held it open on his knees. He said everybody was looking very sad. The hawser, that means a person from the village, he had brought an old primer. Primer is a sort of a book which is used to learn the basics of something. Like you have when a child starts learning alphabets, he reads a book with a picture, A for apple, and a picture of apple is drawn on the book. In the same manner, primer is a book that helps you learn the basics of the language. That means he had brought the primer because he wanted to learn the language and he did not know about anything about the language. So he had brought the book, he could understand the difficult words as well as the meaning. That what would be the meaning of the word, that French word. Thumped at the edges. Thumped means the corner pages of the book, they were folded. It means that the book was not new. It was an old book. The book might have been used by someone else before. It had marks on it that the book was not new, it was an old book, an already used book. He held it open on his knees with his great spectacles lying across the pages. The book was lying on his knees open so that he could understand what M. Hamill will say. He could understand his words and he could find out their meaning in the book. So this was something again strange which he encountered. The strange things that Franz encountered. First was there was a huge crowd in front of the town hall. Second, when he reached to the school, M. Hamill's garden, everything was quiet, no commotion, no hustle and bustle. While entering the class, he did not get any kind of scolding, but he was asked gently to be seated at his place. And now he saw M. Hamill dressed up very nicely. And now the back benches of the class, which usually remained empty, they were filled by the people from the village, the hawser, the mayor, postmaster, and several others. This question can be asked in the board examination. So if a question like this is asked, like what are the strange things that were encountered by Franz, you're going to list these things and you're going to explain it. Moving further, while I was wondering about it all, M. Hamill mounted on his chair and in the same grave and gentle tone which he had used to me said. So he says, while I was wondering about everything, that why is everything so strange? Why is everything so unusual? M. Hamill, he mounted his chair. That means he sat on his chair and in the same grave, in serious and gentle tone that he used to me when he said to me to come in, when he asked me to come in, he sat on his chair and in a very serious and gentle tone, he said, my children. He was addressing all of them as my children, even the old elderlies of the village. Why? Because at that time, when they were sitting in the class, they were his students. So he was addressing all his students and he was addressing them as my children. He said, my children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The orders has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. He said that my children, this is going to be the last lesson of French that I will give you now. The order has come from Berlin that now French will no longer to be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. And a new master, the new master comes tomorrow. He says a new master will come tomorrow and he will teach you German. So this is the last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive. He said to all of them, he said, my children, this is your last French lesson. Why? Because an order was passed that now only German will be taught in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine and not French, which means I will be leaving this place and a new master will come tomorrow that will teach you all German. And then he says, so this is your last French lesson, and therefore I want all of you to be very attentive, to listen to me very, very attentively. What a thunderclap these words were to me. Now in France, he heard these words. He heard this announcement made by M. Hamel. He was shocked. He was like, oh my God, what has happened? When and how? Oh, the wretches. That was what they had put me. That was what they had put up at the town hall. He says, oh my God, this means this is what they were displaying. This was what that was displayed on the bulletin board. This is why there was a huge crowd in front of the bulletin board. Now I understand that why everybody was quiet. So he says, now I'm understanding that why there's an unusual, a strange behavior everywhere. Why is everyone so much serious, so much sad? It is because now we will not be able to learn French anymore. And then he says, my last French lesson? Why? I hardly knew how to write. I should never learn anymore. He says, my last French lesson. Now, Franz is very much ashamed. He's embarrassed. He says, it is my last French lesson. But why? I don't know how to even write. I don't know how to speak French. Why this is my last French lesson? And then he says, and probably I will not be able to learn it now. I will not be getting a chance to learn French anymore. I must stop there then. He says that means I must stop here now. He's so sad. He's taken aback by the words of M. Hamel. Franz says that, oh my God, this is my last French lesson. But why? I hardly know how to write it. And I think now I will no more be able to learn how to write it. Why? Because an order has come that the French will no longer be taught to them. So how will he be able to learn? Oh, how sorry I was for not learning my lessons, for seeking birds' eggs or going sliding on the Saar. He says, how sorry I am. I'm very guilty. Franz was feeling that guilt in his heart, that how sorry he was for not learning his lessons on time, for not attending the classes properly. Because whenever he wanted to go out to have a merry time, to go and seek birds' eggs, or whenever he wanted to go sliding on the Saar. Saar is a sort of a lake there, and he used to go there and he used to have a merry time around at the sides of the Saar. So he says, why did I go there? And why I did not attend my lessons? Here at this time, Franz was feeling guilty. He was feeling sorry for himself. My books that had seemed such a nuisance a while ago, so heavy to carry, my grammar and my history of the saints were old friends now. He said that so far I always used to think why I am studying this, like usually many of us do. If we are not interested in a subject, or if we don't want to study, or if we don't want to read, then we seldom think, oh my God, why I'm studying this? What is the use of it? Why I'm reading this? In the same manner, Franz, he said that my books, which had seemed all a nuisance to me, which had seemed so heavy to carry, my books of grammar, history, they were now old friends to me. It was like he was making a connection with his books, with his language. That all those things I never wanted to read, I never wanted to study, I wanted to learn them now. He says he wanted to be able to learn them. And all of his books, everything were seeming as his old friends that he did not want to give up. And M. Hamel too, the idea that he was going away, that I should never see him again, made me forget about his ruler and how cranky he was. He says, not only about my books, but Franz was feeling very sorry about M. Hamel. Why? Because M. Hamel was about to leave that place. He said that also I'm sad because I will not get to see M. Hamel from the next day. And that made him forget about his ruler and about how cranky he was, that about sometimes how mad he used to get at him. He forgot everything. He was just feeling sorry about M. Hamel and about himself, about his behavior, his deeds, that why he didn't take it seriously before. If he would have, then he would not have repented for it. He would not have regret for that. Poor man, it was in honor of this last lesson that he had put on his fine Sunday clothes. So he says, it is because he wanted to pay respect to his last French lesson. It was in honor of his last French lesson that he had put on his finest clothes that he used to wear on special occasions. Why the old men of the village were sitting there in the back of the room? It was because they were sorry too, that they had not gone to school more. He says the people from the village, they were occupying the back benches of the class. Why? Because they were feeling sorry that whole they wasted their whole life without learning anything. They did not attend the school. Had they come and attended the class, they would not have felt sorry. Even they did not know how to write French. They were also very much unaware about their mother tongue, which was a matter of shame, a matter of embarrassment for all of them. So it was their way of thanking our master for his 40 years of faithful service. So when they came here and when they sat on the benches, when they were occupying the back benches, it was their way of feeling sorry for themselves, and also they wanted to thank the master for his 40 years of dedicated service that he gave to the school, to the students. And also they were trying to show their respect for the country that was theirs no more. Now, why has this line been written, for the country that was theirs no more? This line, for the country that was theirs no more, means now France was overtaken by Prussia, and now only their rules were to be followed there. So it was not their country. They were already enslaved, and they had to follow what was told to them. So it was their way of paying respect to M. Hamel for his 40 years of dedicated service and showing the respect for the country that no longer belonged to them. While I was thinking of all this, I heard my name called. So he says, while I was wondering all this, while I was thinking all this, I heard M. Hamel calling my name. It was my turn to recite. He says, now it was my turn to recite the chapter, the rules, whatever I have learned. What would I not have given to be able to say that dreadful rule for the participle all through? Very loud and clear without one mistake. So he says, while I was thinking all this, I heard my name called by M. Hamel. And why did he call his name? Because it was his turn to recite whatever he had learned. But did he learn anything? No. In the starting of the chapter, The first few lines, it says that he was afraid of the scolding of M. Hamel. Why? Because he did not learn the rule of participles. So here it was his turn to recite the rule of participles. But then he said that I tried my best. I tried I tried my best, to the best of my ability, that I could say the rule of participle all at once, very loud and very clear, without even making a single mistake. He he says that I wanted to recite the rule without making any mistake, very loudly and very clearly all at once. But I got mixed up on the first words and stood there. He says, but unfortunately, I mixed up. Got confused on the first words and stood there. I made a mistake. Holding onto my desk, my heart beating and not daring to look up. He says, I tried the best of my ability to put forward whatever I knew without making any mistake. But then, unfortunately, I could not do so. I made the mistake because I had not prepared the lesson. And when I did so, my head was low. I was holding on to my desk. Why his head was low? His head was low because he was ashamed, he was embarrassed that he had not learned the lesson. He was feeling sorry. I heard M. Hamill say to me, I won't scold you, little Franz. You must feel bad enough. He says, now, M. Hamill, instead of scolding me, he said that, my little Franz, I will not scold you for this. Why? Because you yourself must feel bad about it. And maybe, might be already you're feeling bad about it, that you're not able to recite it properly. See how it is. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time. He says, we people, we keep on postponing things. And it's not only in the chapter. In general also, we keep on postponing things. When we do not feel like doing a certain kind of homework or any sort of a thing, any work, we always say we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. And therefore, we keep on postponing it. And then a day comes that either we don't do it at all, or if we have a deadline over our heads, we have to complete it at a very fast speed, at a very fast pace. And then we do it all without understanding anything. And this happens with all of us. How do we know that our tomorrow is going to come? That will help us finish that work. And that's why it is always said that you should never leave your work. You should never postpone your work for tomorrow. Whatever work you have, do it today, do it now. And the same happened with the people in Alsace. He said that every time, whenever work is given to you, we say, oh, we have plenty of time, we'll do it. I'll learn it tomorrow. And he says, now you see where we have come out. Now you see what you've come out with. Now you'll not have any tomorrow. Now you will not have any more learning sessions. And that's the great trouble with Alsace. He says that is the biggest problem with Alsace, the people of Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. And he says every time, everyone over Alsace, they keep on postponing their work till tomorrow. That we'll do it tomorrow. Now those fellows out there will have the right to say to you, how is it you pretend to be Frenchmen and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language? He says, now you have given a chance to those fellows, those Prussians. They can now ask you that what kind of Frenchmen you are, what kind of people you are. You don't even know your mother tongue. You do not know how to speak, how to write your own language. What kind of people you are? How can you say that you're loyal to your country when you do not know how to speak your mother tongue only? But then he says, you are not the worst, poor little Franz. We have all a great deal to reproach ourselves with. He says, but you are not only the one who is to be blamed. We all are to be blamed in some or the other way. It is a great deal for all of us. We all need to think about it once again. We all are very much disappointed with ourselves. And all those, who are all those who he blames for not giving them a chance to learn? First was the children themselves, because they did not pay any attention in the class. Your parents were not anxious enough to have you learn. They preferred to put you to work on a farm or at the mills so as to have a little more money. He says even your parents, they were not serious about your studies. They were never ever serious about your studies. They always wanted you to go to work. They never sent you to school. They always sent you to farm, to work there so that they could earn a little more money from there. And I have been to blame also. Have I not often sent you to water my flowers instead of learning your lessons? And when I wanted to go fishing, did I not just give you a holiday? He says, and not only your parents, even I am to be blamed for this. Whenever I wanted, I've sent you students to water my flowers instead of giving you time to learn your lessons. And whenever I wanted to go out for fishing, I gave you all a holiday just like that. Now here, after this part comes another question that was also part of the board examination this year. What role does the society play in the education of the children? I repeat the question. What role does the society play in the education of the children? Give instances from the chapter. Here, you will describe how the people ignored their lessons in the last lesson. How Franz, he never attended the classes and he used to go out to spend a merry time. How the parents of the children, they never sent their children to school. They always preferred sending their children to work so that they could earn a little more money. And how M. Hamill, did not, whenever he felt like going for fishing, he gave holiday to his students and he sent his students to water his flowers, to take care of his flowers, instead of giving them time so that they could learn their lessons. So still here we have discussed two most important questions. First was the unusual things that Franz noticed. And the next question is, what role does the society play in education of children? Moving further, then from one thing to another, M. Hamill went on to talk of the French language. That means now M. Hamill, he started speaking about the French language, saying that it was the most beautiful language in the world. He says now M. Hamill, he started talking about the French language, saying that the French language was the most beautiful language in the world, the clearest and the most logical language, that we must guard it among us and never forget it. He says that this is the most beautiful language and we shall always guard it. We should always hold it responsibly with us and we should never forget our mother language, mother tongue. Because when people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. He says, as long as you hold fast, you have your mother tongue, you have your language with yourself. It means you have a sense of identity. You are somewhere connected with your nation, with your country. And That sense of connection, that sense of identity, and that unitedness gives you the motivation, the power to free yourselves from any kind of slavery. M. Hamill says that your mother tongue is your identity. It is something that tells your identification from a particular country. And if you hold fast to your mother tongue, if you guard it, if you hold it responsibly, that means you are united with the nation. You're united with your countrymen. And that unitedness will give you a sense of power, will give you a sense of motivation, and that will act as a key to your prison. That means you will always keep yourself motivated and you will try to free yourself from every kind of slavery you are in, from every kind of foundation, every kind of prison you are in. So that language will act as a key to your prison. Then he opened a grammar and read us our lesson. And after explaining them the importance of their language, he opened a book of grammar and he read a lesson to them. I was amazed to see how well I understood it. Franz says that I was very much amazed. I was very much surprised at how well I was able to understand the chapter. It seemed so easy to me. All he said seemed so easy, I think. I think too that I had never listened so carefully and that he had never explained everything with so much patience. He said that when he started reading the chapter, it seemed that everything was so much easy and I was able to understand everything. And he also gives a reason that why he was able to understand everything. He says, maybe I was listening at that time very carefully. Maybe I had never listened so carefully before. I was there in the class, but I was always physically present. Now, you people can also relate with this because many students in the class, they are only physically present, but mentally they're thinking of something else. And therefore, when a teacher asks you a question between, you are unable to answer because you were not paying attention in the class. In the same manner, he says that maybe usually I am not so attentive in the class. I do not listen to the lesson very carefully. And therefore, I am not able to understand it. But today, I was also listening very carefully. And maybe also one reason can be that M. Hamill was explaining everything with so much patience that he might have not shown before. That he was very quiet and he was explaining everything very patiently, very slowly, very nicely. It seemed almost as if the poor man wanted to give us all he knew. He says it was seeming that this poor man, M. Hamill, he wanted to give us all his knowledge, everything that he had before going away. And he wanted to put it all into our heads at one stroke so that we do not face any kind of difficulty in future. M. Hamill, he was teaching with so much dedication, so much passionate he was that he wanted to give away everything, all sort of knowledge that he had about the subject, about the language, and he wanted to put it all, and he wanted to store it in their minds at one stroke so that they do not face any kind of difficulty in future.